Good day, I'm Erwin Schwella. I'm the Dean of the School of Social Innovation at Hugenote. I also am facilitating a number of other institutions in our ecosystem of knowledge institutions, and that is the Center for Good Governance in Africa, attached to the School of Social Innovation. Also our Institute for Technology in Society. And we work with the hashtag Integritas movement, which is a cross-cutting value proposition working with values and also the creation and co-creation of value, public value, in order to support the things that we do, because we believe integrity is dignity and corruption kills. We also work with shall we say, an architecture of ideas linked to institutions, and I've referred to some of the institutions that we are working with, and also implementation. And when we implement with you, the people. We, the people, implement so that we can use the implementation as prototypes in our social innovation model in order to learn about solutions for society, which we can then replicate, scale, and disseminate. I'm going to, in this particular part of our series of conversations, talk about leadership. Leadership as being a necessary but not completely sufficient solution to many of society's problems. We have a big value that we place on leadership, but we also realize that leaders need followers and followers need leaders. So it is not sufficient, not completely sufficient, to have only good leadership. You have to work in relationships with leaders and followers. And in some ways it's very interesting to realize that followership is the apprenticeship of leadership. If you have in your career or in your profession or in your workplace, if you have actually learned to be a competent follower, that doesn't mean a blindly loyal follower. It doesn't mean somebody who is subdued and suppressed and oppressed, but a proper professional and responsible follower. Then that confirms that you will probably also become a good, competent and professional leader. So that's one point about leadership and followership. They go together. Why leadership is also not only why leadership is not a completely sufficient contribution to organizational and national and overall performance and adding public value, is because we have to realize that leadership makes a big difference, but sometimes it cannot solve all of your problems. What do we mean by that? Let me explain that to you by a parable, by a metaphor. Leadership in some ways, and especially in South Africa, given the institutional toxicity that we have, signs of institutional fatigue, is the fact that leadership is somewhat like a fishbowl with goldfish in it. And that particular parable says that if you have good leadership and good water in the fishbowl, then you will be successful. But if you have bad leadership, unethical and ineffective leadership, and you have good water in the fishbowl, then those leadership goldfish can do quite well, because they can then work with the conditions. However, the problem comes in when you have unethical and ineffective leadership and you also have toxic water in the fishbowl. Your dilemma is then that there's often a call that you should substitute the fish. The problem is, however, even when you then put in good leaders in the fishbowl where the water is toxic, they become poisoned and they either function suboptimally or they die. So in some ways, leadership needs to be complemented by systems, by contexts, by, in our example, by non-toxic, fresh and potable and healthy water. We know, for example, in the South African case, that in many cases we substituted series of boards of directors, directors general, professionals into a corrupt, toxic water environment, and those leadership fish just became bad leaders. There is, in actual fact, a solid proposition which says that if you introduce good leadership to bad conditions, toxic and corrupt conditions, chances are better that those leaders will become toxic and corrupt than the probabilities that they will change the leadership situation. So you may actually lose twice then, in the sense that not only do you retain the toxic water, but you actually also lose good leaders. That is some of the real realities, and that is why we say that leadership is fundamentally important and is a necessary condition for improved societies, improved states, improved businesses, improved performance. But it is not, it is necessary but not sufficient. You also need to have good systems working, and that calls for a long-term relationship between good leadership and good institutions on a continuous basis. Where we are in South Africa, we have to start somewhere after we have suffered quite a lot of problems and are currently confronted with serious issues in our institutional and leadership situations. And I would like to introduce very briefly to you a leadership model which I've developed over many years of work with institutions in South Africa as the Professor of Public Leadership at Stellenbosch University, also a full professor at Tilburg University in the Netherlands, having worked with the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University, Leuven University, Leiden University, and the university, the Chancellor University in Namibia, in Malawi, and with African institutions such as the Namibian Institute for Public Administration and Management. I have designed and co-created this particular leadership model with students and colleagues over many years, so I claim some ownership for it on the basis of compiling it, but I've learned from working with colleagues and with professionals in leadership situations. And essentially, I'm going to quickly take you through the components of this leadership model. At the outer edge, and this is not a one-minute manager story, it's a story which calls for understanding, analysis, and in actual fact, applying reflective practice, because it is learning leadership. First circle of this particular dynamic model is the vitamin C approach to leadership. If you are going to be a good leader, you must understand your context. That means that you must be sensitive to what happens in the political, economic, social, and technological system outside of your leadership organization or the organization that you lead. So you must understand context and deal with it. Secondly, you must face the challenges that come from that context. That context will not only provide you with resources and opportunities, it will always also provide you with challenges. And those challenges can be changed into opportunities, but you must be aware that there will be challenges. The third C of the vitamin C approach to leadership is the competencies that you need. You need competencies. You need intellectual intelligence, but also emotional intelligence. You need to be a competent leader. You must engage, enroll for our courses, our short courses at the School of Social Innovation to enhance your leadership competencies. The next C is you need organizational capacity. I've already said that it's no use being an excellent leader and you work in a toxic organization and the capacity of that organization to support good leadership is null and void. Then you're also going to fail, irrespective of how good your leadership is. And then you need to be aware of the importance of change. You need a theory of change. And in our case, we work with many theories of change, but one which works quite well in a learning leadership approach where you deal with complex adaptive problems or wicked problems is the change theory of John Kotter, where you must create awareness for the need for change. You must, in actual fact, create a leading coalition, have a bias for action, build prototypes in an innovative way, and then learn from that change. The John Kotter 8 steps model of change. So those are your C's. Within those C's, in the next ring of the onion, as it were, you need leadership of the head, and you need leadership of the hands, and you need leadership of the heart. 3 H's. You must think, you must conceptualize, you must theorize, you must analyze. You need leadership of the head, which is strategic, analytical, conceptual, and theoretical. You also need leadership of the heart, which is lead with empathy, lead with feeling, lead with compassion, lead without being cold, callous, and clinical. And then you need leadership of the hands. We have many leaders also in South Africa, and sometimes maybe even more so in South Africa, who will tell you that they have some form of skills to talk but not walk. And they will, in actual fact, be incompassionate or not compassionate because they will be corrupt. And over and above that, they will do nothing. You must do something. You must have a bias for action. So those are the H's. You need leadership of the head, the heart, and the hands. Then, when you are leading, you must lead individuals. So you must build individual competency. You must build learning teams and involve yourself with team learning. But you must also build institutional capacity. You must build the systems of your organization, not only the individuals. Those go hand in hand. If you have good individuals but bad systems, you're going to fail. If you have bad individuals and good systems, you will also fail. So you need not only the head, heart, and hands, you also need individuals who are competent and institutions who are capacitated. And for that, you also need to deal with roles, responsibilities, and relationships. So leaders must understand that you must fulfill different roles under different circumstances. Sometimes you must be the leader as teacher. Sometimes you must be the leader as preacher. Sometimes you must be the leader as advocate. Sometimes you must be the leader as activist. Sometimes you must be the leader as academic. Sometimes you must be the leader as professional. Those are different roles, and you must select the roles to fit with the context and the challenges, and to deal with the head, heart, and hands, to build competent individuals and capacitated institutions. Those are the different roles that you must get informed about and must get competent in. Then leadership is about the second R. It's about the responsibilities. Leaders have rights. They have authority. But they also have responsibility, and they should not only have power, but legal and legitimate authority. And they should use those rights and responsibilities in particular ways to make sure that they act in an ethical and effective way. And you must take your responsibility as a leader. Leadership is not about power and privilege. It's about the privilege to serve. You must be more concerned about the quality that you drive, of the roads that you drive on, more concerned about the quality of the roads that you drive on than about the quality of your official and sponsored car that you drive on those roads. And often people get that completely wrong. They want the big SUV, the luxury German car. That's one place where we don't decolonize. We don't go for the small car, which will be less colonial. We go for the top marks of important cars, SUVs. So it's not about privilege, it's about service. And the last point, the last R is leadership as a relationship. You cannot lead if you lose the relationship. And that calls for understanding, empathy, and sometimes also that you should not serve your own purpose, but be the lesser party. If we listen to what happened in South Africa with the Zondo Commission, then I can give you a fairly good generalized rule. And that is those toxic leaders who were so corrupt were also extremely arrogant. And you could just see them in the passageways of those big state-owned enterprises or public service organizations or businesses, where they walk and you don't tell them anything. They know it all already. And if you tell them anything, they will find a way of discrediting you on the basis of some form of given quality. They will make you a racist if you're not a racist. They will make you an incompetent if you're not incompetent. Because they hide their weaknesses in terms of building constructive relationships in a way by means of which they have to compensate for their weaknesses by making you, in some ways, the victim of the situation. So those are the 3 R's: roles, responsibilities, and relationships. Then you need S's. You need the S of being sympathetic, and you need the S of being sensible. So sensible, sympathetic leadership. So those are 2 S's. And then finally there's a T. And the T is about leading transition. We often underestimate the need for models of change and theories of change to get from here to there, to get from the problematic current reality towards the inspiring future vision. You must have a theory of transition and change. And you must also lead transformation, which is fundamental change. And transformation is about being ethical and effective and representative. Not only being representative, but not ethical and effective. Not only being ethical, but not effective and representative. Not only being ethical and effective, if I've got that sequence right now, you need to be, and our Constitution says that in section 198, where the values of public administration are explained. It says we need to be broadly representative, ethical and effective. In South Africa, there seems to be an emphasis on only one of these elements, and you can think what this element is. I'm not going to spell it out to you. You are intelligent enough to find it out. If you think about transformation in South Africa, do you think about ethics? Or do you think about effectiveness? Or do you think about representation? The call is yours. You will get to the answer. I will leave that with you. So you need C's. The C's being the idea of sensitive to context, understanding the challenges, working with competencies, having institutional capacity, and having a theory of change. You need H's, leadership of the head, the heart, and the hands. You need R's. You need to have responsibilities. You need to have the roles and the relationships. You need good individuals, I's, and institutions. You need sensitivity and sensibility. And you need transition and transformation. Now, for us who are faith-based, that also gives you, and this may not be appropriate. If it's not to you, that's fine. But for we who work with a faith-based approach, we also say that could be interpreted as the Christ model of leadership. C's, H's, R's, I's, S's, and T's, and that is a model of leadership which I have configured over 40 years of studying and dealing and working with leaders and leadership, and I hope it can also be useful to you. If you want to learn more about this, join us to share more of our ideas with us in terms of leadership for social innovation. Join us in our institution, in the School of Social Innovation, at Hugenote, in our Center for Good Governance in Africa, in our Institute for Technology and Society. Join us in our #Integritas movement, and join us in our local integrity communities, and help us to build public value and to make South Africa a better place. I thank you, Erwin Schwella, and I am currently the Dean of the School of Social Innovation at Hugenote. Thank you very much.